He never believed the past could return, until it did, standing before him in the form of 3 small faces he could never forget. Alexander Reed, the man once called a genius of business, stood frozen on the sunlit beach. Laughter floated across the breeze, light and unburdened, yet each sound struck deeper than any boardroom loss. For a long time he could not move, his gaze fixed on the woman watching the children, Claire. The same woman whose tears he once ignored. He thought she had vanished from his story forever, but life had written a chapter he never expected to read. The girls looked like him, the same sharp eyes, the same stubborn expressions, and that truth hit harder than any punishment. 2 years ago, he walked away from responsibility, certain that success required sacrifice. Now he saw what he had truly given up, something no wealth could ever replace. 2 years earlier, when Claire told him she was expecting, he had chosen pride over love. He convinced himself that fatherhood would ruin his empire, that emotions were weaknesses disguised as promises. He believed walking away was strength, but watching those children now, barefoot in the sand, he finally understood. The empire he built had walls too high for love to enter, and he had been its only prisoner all along. The night he left her was silent, yet it echoed for years in his mind. Alexander had walked out of Claire's apartment without looking back, his expression cold, but his heart pounding with confusion. He told himself it was the right thing to do, that emotions only led to ruin. In his world, success demanded control and love was chaos. But when the elevator doors closed that night, he caught his reflection and saw a flicker of something he could not erase. Fear. Not fear of failure, but of feeling. He drowned that fear in work, burying himself beneath numbers, contracts, and board meetings until even his assistant could see the emptiness in his eyes. He built higher towers, gained louder applause, yet each achievement felt smaller than the one before. The man who once conquered every challenge could not escape the silence that followed him home. Some nights, he would stare at the city lights and imagine her face in them, soft and forgiving, until guilt forced him to turn away. He told himself she had moved on, that she was fine without him. But sometimes when he saw children laughing in the streets, something twisted inside him, a quiet ache that reminded him of the one promise he never kept. Morning light poured through the glass walls of his office, but it could not warm him. Alexander sat behind his desk, staring at the city that once felt like his empire. Every success had a cost, and now he was beginning to count it. His name was printed on magazines, his speeches quoted by students, but none of that filled the silence inside him. Sometimes, when he caught his reflection in the glass, he barely recognized the man staring back. His assistant would knock and remind him of meetings, yet his mind drifted elsewhere, to a woman whose laughter he had tried to forget, and to 3 children he had never met. Far away, Claire woke to the sound of tiny feet running across wooden floors. Her days were full of chaos, breakfast spills, tangled hair, endless questions, but also a kind of peace she had never known. Her daughters, Lily, Grace, and June, were her whole world. She had learned to live without help, without his presence, and yet sometimes, when the sun set over the ocean, she found herself wondering if he ever thought of them. She didn't know that on those same nights, he was looking out at the same horizon, feeling a loneliness that no fortune could silence. That afternoon, fate decided to close the distance neither of them had dared to cross. Alexander had come to the coast on business, a quiet retreat arranged by his company after months of exhaustion. He was supposed to meet investors, but instead he found himself wandering toward the beach, drawn by laughter that felt hauntingly familiar. The breeze carried the sound of children playing, soft yet sharp enough to stir something buried deep within him. He followed the sound until his steps stopped on their own. There, near the waves, 3 little girls were building a sandcastle. Identical smiles, identical curls, and the same piercing blue eyes that once stared at him through a mirror. His breath caught. For a moment he thought he was dreaming. Then he saw her. Claire, kneeling beside them, brushing sand off their tiny hands. Time froze. The world seemed to vanish, leaving only the crash of waves and the pounding of his heart. He wanted to speak but could not. Every word died before it reached his lips. She looked up and their eyes met. Years of silence screaming between them. Claire did not move, yet her calmness felt louder than anger. He took a hesitant step forward, but the guilt in his chest was heavier than the ocean itself. He had faced thousands of people in boardrooms, but never had a moment silenced him like this one. Alexander stood frozen as the waves brushed against his shoes, his throat dry and his pulse wild. The children laughed, chasing each other across the sand, their joy cutting through him like truth. Claire gathered their little shoes, pretending not to notice him, but her hands trembled slightly, the same way they used to when she tried to hide her emotions. He wanted to say her name, but guilt sealed his lips. Every step toward her felt like walking through memories he had buried. Finally, she turned to face him, and in her eyes, he saw everything he had lost: love, strength, and peace. Claire. He whispered, the name almost breaking. She looked at him, calm yet distant, as if he were a ghost from another life. "You should leave, Alexander," she said softly, her voice steady but tired. "We've built something you never wanted. Don't destroy it now." Her words hit him harder than any accusation. He looked at the 3 girls again, realizing that his own arrogance had created this distance. Each child's smile felt like a mirror reflecting everything he refused to see. And in that moment he knew, no amount of power could undo what pride had cost him. That night, he could not sleep. The sound of the ocean still echoed in his mind, mixed with the laughter of 3 children who shared his eyes. Alexander sat on the balcony of his hotel, staring at the dark waves that seemed to whisper the truth he had denied for years. For the first time in his life, the silence frightened him. He had spent years chasing numbers, victories, and headlines, but none of them could fill the emptiness he now felt. Every choice, every cruel word he once justified, replayed like a haunting song. He realized that success without love was not power, it was punishment. The next morning, he walked back to the beach. Claire stood there, watching her daughters play. When she saw him, she did not speak, but her expression softened just enough for him to step closer. "I was wrong," he said quietly. "All these years, I thought I was protecting myself. But I was only running from what mattered most." Tears filled her eyes, but she looked away. "They don't know who you are," she whispered. "But they will one day." He nodded slowly, understanding the weight of her words. As the children laughed and waves crashed around them, Alexander finally smiled. Not the practiced smile of a CEO, but the fragile smile of a man learning how to feel again.